Hello everyone! It's not TV Talks, it's not Veggie Talks, it's just a different review. A little bit of a special episode, I guess. Way back when I did my regular reviews, there was something I always wanted to talk about, but I revamped before I could. But now I want to go back and talk about it, because it's something that I know a lot about. For those of you who don't know, the Christian children's market has been pretty lucrative since 1993. Well, there was almost nothing in that department. VeggieTales came out with their hit episode, Where's God When I'm Scared, in 1993. This debut just took the Christian population by storm. It quickly became extremely popular and got into a lot of attention from big-name publishers like Word Entertainment and later on Lyric Studios. So, from the preceding years, Christian children's entertainment became pretty decently big. In fact, some non-Christians even were watching stuff like VeggieTales because they were just enjoying it so much. So naturally, a lot of other people wanted to throw their hats in the ring, and some people still do. In fact, Alfonso and I are actually developing our show to get into that market after we're done with college, and we've been working on that for almost 2 years now, so we'll talk more about it when the time comes closer. But a lot of these things that tried to throw their hat in and tried to compete with VeggieTales got wiped out in about 3 episodes. Ever hear of something called the Good Sports Gang? That's a topic for another day. Sometimes they try to attach big names to them, like Kurt Warner in the Good Sports Gang. The closest thing that could come to capturing VeggieTales' success was Max Lucado's Hermie and Friends. Max Lucado is a very popular Christian children's author, and with his most popular series of books, the Hermie and Friends books, he was able to somewhat compete with VeggieTales, albeit for an extremely lower age demographic. The only real reason he was able to hang on so long is because not only Max Lucado's a recognizable name, but because he added big names like Tim Conway and Don Knotts to the cast. This doesn't really seem relevant to the subject, but this has a point. The market is very competitive, or at least was when VeggieTales was still huge. You either struck it big right away, or just faded away into obscurity. Unless you're Hermie, which you can do both. But, aside from Hermie and Friends, there was one more exception. This one is known by Christians all over the board, but not particularly fondly. It's a little-known show called Willie Ames's Bibleman. Willie Ames was a sitcom star in such shows as 8 Isn't Enough and Charles in Charge. They were pretty big hits, and he was a pretty popular actor, too. But after a lot of messy family situations and addictions and all, he kind of got messed up, and eventually he found his way to God. And it changed his life. He became a completely strong person, he was more self-confident, he was happier, he had a healthier life with his family. That sort of stuff. So the Word of God really changed Willie Ames's life. And he felt that it would be good to tell children about this. After all, he's an actor and he's an entertainer, so why not get back into the business, but for God's sake? That sounds like a good idea, and it sounds like a good way to utilize a newfound salvation, right? Well, he came up with this idea that children, specifically young boys, really like superheroes. And, well, aside from Larry Boy, which actually hadn't debuted yet, there were no Christian superheroes, so why not come up with one and try to come up with something new? So he got a little bit of a crew together, he got some costume pieces and special effects, and then he created the 2 pilot episodes of Bibleman, Big Book and Back to School, and they were not good. Because they weren't really about Bibleman. The first one was just, half of it was concerts with children singing worship songs, and then the whole Bibleman stuff was only about 3 minutes. And then there was also a little bit of weird, dorky 80s sitcom stuff in there. And then Back to School was sort of like a diet version of what Bibleman would later become. And they weren't even really sold in stores. They were mostly given out by churches and just shown in promotional things at Family Christian Bookstore. By the way, let's have a moment of silence for Family Christian Bookstore, which is now announced bankruptcy. A moment's too long. You can just pause the video. So Big Book and Back to School did nothing to help Bibleman, right? Well, monetary-wise, yes, but again, like Where's God When I'm Scared, some publishers got a hold of it. Pamplin Entertainment, which was a rising name in the Christian department, saw Big Book going back to school, and then flew Williams over, and they reached a deal to release 3 episodes, which is usually how much you get before they decide to terminate you. So, yeah, you can tell they're just trying to dip their feet in the water with this one. So, there were a bunch of episodes created. 6 Lives of the Fibbler, Silencing the Gospel Queen, and Defeating the Shadow of Doubt. The latter was attacked brutally by agnostics or atheists, or the general public especially, claiming that Bibleman can be defeated by logic. I'm going to get to this later because I'm going to review each episode. Yeah, I went through a lot of preparation for this one. But anyways, that one got under a lot of heavy fire. But because it got under a lot of heavy fire, Bibleman started picking up a lot of popularity. People were starting to turn their heads and take a look at this and, hey, Willie Ames, he's just at the peak of his popularity. Hey, let's check it out. And people thought it was alright. That was kind of the general reaction at the time. Keep in mind, what they thought at the time is not what people think now. They were kind of mesmerized by the whole thing because they hadn't seen anything like it before. So they got a bigger budget and were renewed for 2 more episodes. And the costume changed a bit. He got a new sidekick, and he got a lot bigger of a budget. Everything was upgraded except for the villains casting, which I'll talk about later. The show got a lot bigger of a budget, although still pretty low budget. The camera work was a lot better, and some of the special effects weren't nearly as cringy. And again, kept getting popular. So, finally, to capitalize its popularity, they just decided to keep it going, keep renewing it. And yeah, that went pretty well. Until, in 2003, something happened. Willie Ames had a severe back injury and was no longer able to do the show, because he not only wrote, directed, and starred in it, well, he also was the one that was carrying the show's weight. He was the reason people were buying this stuff, and because he had a back injury now and was no longer able to do all the physical stuff, and he was not liking the direction that the studio was taking it, because one thing is really important with Bibleman is Williams never owned the rights to the character or the show. As soon as he signed on to do 6 Lives of the Fibbler and onwards, he sold everything to Pamplin, who promptly sold everything to Thomas Nelson. And because of that, the show was getting in a lot stranger of a direction. The budget kept going up, although it still wasn't the best, but the tone was changing severely. I'll explain this more when we get on to the episodes, but you can tell where the network is trying to take it and what episode specifically things start to change. It's very obvious. Things are getting a lot lighter, things are getting a lot goofier and cartoonier. And then Willie Ames had to go, so then they replaced him with some guy who was far less charismatic and just kind of generic. And in fact, because they got a new guy, why not just revamp the whole show into Bibleman Power Source? And then this is exactly what Thomas Nelson wanted the show to be. Bright, goofy, weird, should be animated, except there's an animated show out now, but I'm getting too ahead of myself. Yeah, it's going to be hard to just summarize the whole thing because it has so many different incarnations it goes throughout the about 12 years it lasted. With only just a couple years at a time would it be able to be defined as one entity before it would just change entirely. While at first, when they were having less network interfering, they seemed to kind of be going in a specific direction. But then that kind of got messed up, and then once Willie Ames was out of the picture, they were able to go full force. Because, after all, there's no one else who's going to put up a fight. But props to the guy who plays Cypher, Bibleman's regular psychic. He wasn't the one at first, but he comes in later. His name is Brady Williams, and aside from Willie Ames, he's the best actor here. He actually is, genuinely good at his stuff. And also, he's the only actor to never quit the show. Ever since the episode they signed him on, Conquering the Wrath of Rage, he's never left. Everybody else has left at one point or another. Even the ones that are back towards the end, they left for a while, but now are back. He obviously saw something in there, saw that this could be a really good thing if they just gave it time and more work. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. Because Bibleman was always kind of a laughingstock amongst the Christian community. See, there was something wrong with the show, aside from the lousy production values. Williams is a great actor, but he is absolutely not a good writer. Where do I begin? The messages are on par with 3-2-1 Penguins. Superficial, very blanket, so broad it can't apply to anything. Except for a couple. There are a couple that are different. And you'll see why in just a bit. And the tone was just weird. It would fluctuate from being really serious to just being kind of dumb to being serious again to being dumb again. And it wouldn't really pick a side. Or if it was going to just be both, there was no transition. And then, of course, the biggest part everyone talks about, the humor. The humor is some of the worst I've seen in a children's show. Like, actually. It's on par with Teletoon. Excluding Total Drama, of course. Whenever they try to do jokes, they're either really obvious, really lame, really thought out puns or exaggerated voices, and then they'll try to do adult bonuses, which are just casually referencing things like Sonny and Cher or Donnie and Marie and stuff like that. And the fourth wall jokes are so groan-worthy. Yeah, watch almost any episode of the show and you will see exactly what I'm talking about and what everyone's been talking about. See, the thing is, VeggieTales knew its audience and knew how to tell jokes in a natural way. Bibleman clearly sees what VeggieTales is doing and desperately tries to be like them and desperately trying to emulate their style of pop culture referencing, but that's what it comes across as. Desperately trying to imitate something rather than just either being its own thing or doing it naturally. It's trying so hard to be something else that it's forgetting what it really is, and then it's hurting that in the process. You can't be both VeggieTales and Batman. Larry Boy is the closest you can get, and you better believe they tried to emulate that. But it just didn't work, and the production value didn't help. It's because of all this thing and a lot of stilted acting, specifically from the kids. There were some good actors, like, of course, Cypher and the first Bibleman were great, and even the main recurring villain at first, he was actually pretty good. For a while. But before I once again continue to cover this show in a broad stroke, let's talk about the episodes individually. Big Big Book and Back to School don't really count because those were never really released commercially. A lot of people don't even know they exist. So let's talk about the first official episode of what was then called The Bibleman Show, The 6 Lives of the Fibbler, which I always thought it was Fibber as a kid because the font on the re-release is just weird. And speaking of re-release, this episode got heavily butchered in the re-release. See, there's a villain called the Fibbler. Obviously, I bet you wouldn't be able to tell that the 6 Lives of the Fibbler has a villain named the Fibbler. But in the re-release, they decide to distort and stretch out his voice. So instead of sounding more like this, he sounds a little more like this. It just sounds weird. But that's not really an issue because we're talking about the original one here. It's really, really, really bad. I mean, I can understand that it's the first episode, but wow, this is awful. First of all, it shouldn't be called The Bibleman Show. It should be called The 5 Nerdy Church Kids Show featuring some Bibleman. The Fibbler gets more screen time than Bibleman does. I'm not kidding. He's just kind of an afterthought. And then there's those 5 kids I talked about. They are in this one and then the next episode, and they're just kind of the focus. They're supposed to be the main characters, sort of. Like the 5 happy-go-lucky church kids that learn a lesson every week, which, to their credit, they realized wouldn't work for a regular occurring show. So they were ditched quickly. But these kids can't act out of a wet paper bag. So, the lesson. How's the lesson? Well, it's about a kid lying constantly, but because the Fibbler uses mind control gas to just influence her to lie, and then she's the bad guy because of it? What? So the Fibbler mind controls somebody doing wrong, and then all of a sudden it's their fault for getting mind controlled. And he's coming up with the lies himself. So they're basically just a puppet, and they're seen as in the wrong for being a puppet. And not knowing about it either. They never find out about the Fibbler, so It's really bad. And then there's a production value that's just awful. The Fiddler, obviously, his face is painted. There's paint lumps on his face. There's supposed to be warts, I think, but it's just paint. You can tell. It's really bad. There's the scene where the Fiddler hits himself in the leg and he shatters like glass. It's a Windows Movie Maker transition, just kind of photoshopped onto a person. The lightsaber stuff is so bad. Because, yes, Bibleman fights with a lightsaber. That's the least of the show's worries. Also, there's a scene in the beginning, I think this one might just be on the re-release only because it might have been an error, but when he picks up his mask in the beginning before we get to the first number, because yes, there's musical numbers in this, but he picks it up and bends it, so it's obviously just made out of rubber. And that's just kind of a perfect foreshadowing for the episode. And then there's the songs in here, which is just a bunch of random worship songs that just stop the story to happen. Kind of like they're trying to transition out of the Big Big Book era, but Big Big Book is trying to grab him by the neck and hold him down. And yeah, they're okay songs, and the kids are okay singers, but they can't dance at all. So if you want to see a whole bunch of church worship drama with a couple bits of Bibleman here and there, this is for you, but if you're in the general audience, this is gonna suck. So moving on to the next one, Silencing the Gossip Queen, which was pretty much made back to back. Is this one any better? Well, it stars the same kids, and then it's about the Gossip Queen using her minions to disguise as janitors, spread one rumor around, and then within literally 20 seconds, it turns into this whole fight that tries to break up the group. Now, to the Fiddler's credit, the reason the group almost split up there was because one of the girls who was being forced to lie, she forgot, and then the lie ended up ruining the performance, and then the whole thing just became a huge thing, and they looked bad in front of everybody. That's understandable. But this is just 20 seconds, and then, oh no, we hate each other magically, even though we've known each other for years. All of a sudden, this random thing that doesn't even make any sense just happens, and oh, we hate you now. We also see that Miles Peterson, who is Bibleman's secret identity, is a school teacher. Even though in the beginning it says that he was a retired billionaire. Okay. And by the way, this is the only time he's ever a school teacher. This never comes back. Ever. For the rest of this series, he is a retired billionaire. The effects are just as laughable as in Fiddler. When the villains melt at the end, it's just the screen freezes and then they kind of Photoshop dissolve them out. And also the way that they get defeated is really, really bad because this is going to be spoilers, but who cares? It's Bibleman. So she has this Sith lightning power, sort of, and he blocks it with his sword a lot. Most of the time it just gets absorbed into the sword, being the lightsaber. But all of a sudden at the end, he's able to deflect it, and then it hits each of them, and then they die. So, yeah, they're not really being consistent either. The writing is really, really bad. All the jokes they try are super bad. And then there's the fight scene they have, because there's a sword fight scene again. The Fiddler ones were a little iffy. At least he had a style to it, I guess. He had a style of fighting, being overly aggressive, which is how he was able to lose. Which is, I'll admit, a little clever. This is just, the guy just kind of taps the sword every so often. It's really, really bad. The cartoonish stuff, they're trying to see if that makes people laugh, and it doesn't. Because it just kind of looks like they don't really have a director on set, like he's eating a sandwich, just kind of going, yeah, that's good, while not even really looking at what's going on set. And we have the first ever villain song, which is one of the things that the show is really, really famous for. I'll admit it's a kind of catchy tune. It's sung pretty well, too. The instrumentals are nice. The lyrics are a little stupid, but it's actually kind of a guilty pleasure of mine. So yeah, this one's a tiny bit better, but it's still pretty bad. But coming into the next one, you know, defeating the Shadow of Doubt, the one that was the big under fire super controversial episode. Well, before we get into that, there was a lot of changes. We have 2 new characters introduced into the main cast. Sort of. So the first one is Eunice, who will stay throughout every single incarnation the show goes through. And will stay till the very end, although played by pretty much a different actress almost every episode. She is the main central computer and kind of controls everything in the Bible cave, I guess it's called. It's so clever. No, it's not. And then he also has a sidekick named Coates. Don't ask why his name is Coates, I have no idea. But he's actually a kind of cool guy, and he's also a really good actor. Too bad he's only in 3 episodes. And of course, he has this little bit with Eunice where they don't get along. Oh, the sidekicks don't like each other, they bicker, oh no. Their stuff is just kind of it's fine. Some of the more entertaining parts in the show, but it's not really much of anything. Just kind of lame. And also, we kind of get another character as well, who later we know as Luxor Spondroth, but right here we know as the Shadow of Doubt. Up until the episode Lead Us Not Into Temptation, this guy will be every single villain. Now, it's not because they're just too cheap and they can't afford another guy, although that's probably the case, actually, because they do even acknowledge that he's the same guy. Basically, the gimmick is he is a demon who constantly gets reshaped by the devil into different forms. And then eventually he just gives up on him, and then that's why he ends up dying in that last one. But he's actually an okay actor. He's a little cringy sometimes, because sometimes he tries a little too hard. But when he's trying to be evil, he's alright. But when he's trying to be funny, it's pretty lame. He's also got this weird sidekick who's just... He's actually kind of, think of it, the 90s version of Seuss. He has the same voice, the same kind of body type. Just give him a question mark shirt and hat and he's good. So, why is this episode so controversial? The lesson. So, first of all, it's about doubting whether or not God exists. And it's about a little girl whose parents are splitting up. She doesn't think God is there. Brilliant setup for the story, guys, but you're on episode 3 of our not very popular show. I don't think you're ready. Probably wait. Do the easier stuff first, like lying, cheating, disobeying your parents. Do that kind of stuff first. Don't do this. This is too big. You're not ready. And that is how I can describe the episode. The arguments they give, you can tell they mean so well. They really want to do good with this. But it's just kind of flimsy. It basically boils down to believe in God because he's there. And yeah, I can kind of see why the atheists kind of target this one, because that's a terrible argument. They don't believe in God to begin with, so if you're gonna just tell a kid believe in God because he's there, it's basically just saying believe in him because I say so. It's not really a good lesson. You could just say that know in your heart that it's true, or God's love is so strong and immense he'll never forget you, and even though things are bad right now, in the end everything works out. It just may take time. That's just off the top of my head. But just because I say so is not a good lesson. Also, this one tries to throw in a lot more action, which I do appreciate, but the fight always turns out the same way. He comes into the layer of the doubt guy, which is the basement of a church, which is all kinds of weird. He does some really weird gag about him being in a costume. They fight. He says the word doubt a lot, and it causes Bibleman to get hurt, and then he disappears. That is how it all goes. And this is the only episode of any incarnation of the show, Power Source or Original, where the villain does not get defeated at the end. No, he just disappears. He vanishes. I guess he's technically retreating, so he technically loses, but he doesn't die. Even all the times when he comes back, he dies. But this one, he doesn't. He just vanishes. Which, on the one hand, is kind of lame, but on the other, it does kind of set up that this guy is going to be a bigger threat than the last two. Granted, he's kind of no different from them, but still, it kind of sets it up sort of nicely, I guess. There's also another villain song in this. What is it? Well, it depends on which version you're watching. This and an upcoming episode, Shattering the Prince of Pride, had their songs completely redone. For whatever reason, I have no idea what it is. The first song is the most 90s thing you can possibly imagine. It's like, who's the biggest villain in your town? It's kind of cringy and really bad, and it's like, who eats his carrots and his peas? Shadow, I doubt everybody doubt now. When Alfonso and I were first watching this, we were laughing our heads off at this song because it's just so awful. And it's the funniest thing you'll see in the show, unintentionally, of course. But we were laughing so hard, and we were going to do a Bob and Larry watch this one, but when we found out that the first 3 episodes were already hacked to shreds, we decided to do episode 5 instead. And yeah, that's coming. But this song is so funny. And then there's another one coming up, which is well, I'm getting ahead of myself. But the other song on the re-release is a little bit more timeless, bad lyrics, and very poorly dubbed over the original. But it's another okay one. Like I said, dumb lyrics, but it's sung okay, but it's clearly not the same guy. But it's okay. It's kind of another guilty pleasure. One of the things I will give the show, though, which everyone can acknowledge, is the soundtrack is okay. The instrumentals are always really good. It's just some of the lyrics kind of falter. And the singers are usually pretty darn good. So yeah, Defeating the Shadow of Doubt. It's just kind of weak, really. But now here we come, the incredible force for joy. The big step into the next era where they have the bigger budget and everything. And for some reason, Ludacris is a different actor. Now, not the rapper. He has, the Lux Spondroth guy always has a sidekick named Ludacris. He gets recast 3 times. This is the incarnation he's in the most. I say incarnation a lot, but to be fair, that's how the people on the show kind of describe it too. Anyways, he goes through 3 different casts. Gone is the Seuss guy, and is now basically just Pauly Shore with a white face and a bandana. He's got a lot of energy, and he could be a great actor. It's just that the direction he's given is so cringy. I can tell it's not his fault. It's not his fault at all. He's really trying here. But you can tell the director was like, kids like derpy stuff. Kids like bouncy off the walls, SpongeBob kind of stuff, even though SpongeBob's not around yet. You get the idea, right? It's like, hey, kids like stupid stuff. Kids like derpy stuff. Be that, please. And it didn't really work. And this one is a little bit different from the last ones. Although Defeating the Shadow of Doubt did have a little bit more of a darker vibe to it, this one is really dark. Even for... Now, it's not the darkest the show is going to get, but when it comes to the kid that's affected, it's a really dark thing. Now, one thing is always, there's a kid... Now that those worship people are gone, it's the kid of the week. Every week there's a new kid and he gets a little bit of a problem. But this is one of the few times Bibleman takes on older children. Not like elementary school, but like late middle school almost. Or maybe even kind of young high school. So it shows that older kids could be affected by this too. And he gets depressed and sad and feels like no one cares about him, which is something that not only is that really prevalent in those kind of ages, but yeah, that is actually kind of dangerous. And the villain actually in this one, I'm not gonna lie, he's actually very, very good. He's not like outstanding and he is kind of cringy, but his goal is to just make everyone miserable and give up on themselves, and then whatever they do to themselves happens. So he's just kind of trying to turn the world into a worse place. Kind of a typical villain thing, but the way he carries it just gives it a lot more weight. Seems like the direction he was given was actually kind of decent. Now, this episode also tries to tackle the healing with the lesson, of course, and that's not bad either. Some of the arguments they give are actually okay. The song number, the lyrics don't suck. Like, actually, they don't suck, and this is the best this guy's sung. I'm pretty sure it's a dub artist because it doesn't quite sound like him. But the song is actually kind of decent. It's called Nothing Makes Me Happy. And you know what? Probably one of the best songs the show's given, especially so far. Now, is this episode good? Well, it's better than the others. There's still the really lame jokes that they try to throw in, except for one. When they break into the Bibleman lair, the one time Ludacris is ever really funny, they're breaking into there, he's like, wow, they got all this high-tech equipment in here, we better destroy it all, and then it just cuts to Ludacris on, like, the computer, whoa, this thing is Pong! And he's just playing Pong. I don't know what it is. It's the way he says it. It's really funny to me. There's a lot of other really dumb jokes in here, though. Like, all of a sudden, he's like, this place so cool. Echo, echo, Falcor, Atreyu. Yeah, because kids are going to get a reference to the never-ending story. I mean, yeah, that movie was popular, but what kid is going to get that? Even back then. The ending is also kind of dumb, too. He's fighting Bibleman, and it looks like he's about to win, which is actually something kind of cool and something built up in Shadow of Doubt, that he could overpower Bibleman if he wasn't prepared, and he almost wins. But then the computer just shoots him with the laser, and then he's dead. It's just kind of a quick fix in the end. You're going to see this come up a lot where the endings are really, really dumb. Now, aside from those little bits, like the bad writing and jokes, and or not the bad writing, because some of the writing is actually okay in this. It's just like the bad jokes, and some kind of inconsistent tone, and that dumb ending. And aside from that, this episode's actually not that bad. I mean, I wouldn't watch it on my own, but I'm glad I watched it once. And if I was going to show my kid an episode, it might as well be this one. I'd probably give it about a 6 out of 10 so far. So yeah, best one so far. And then what do we get next? The finished works of Dr. Fear. We already ripped this one to shreds, so I'm gonna keep this one kind of on the brief side. The story makes no sense. The whole dirt characters are just beyond pointless and really, really dumb. Ludacris gets way more screen time and way, way less funny stuff to do. The whole Bibleman and Kurt getting scared thing isn't even really them getting scared. Kurt just gets bad at basketball, and then Bibleman just has bad dreams that all of a sudden torment his life. The whole thing is really, really poorly written, and it doesn't even give a good reason for why Coates leaves. Because this is the last episode with Coates in it. Now, why we know Willie Ames gets out of Bibleman, we don't know why this guy does. We never find out a reason. Even in universe, we don't know. The only reason is he had to leave. Now, my guess is that he was disloyal to the Bibleman regime, so Bibleman took him behind the barn and then hit him with his lightsaber, and he's like, he had to leave for the good of the Bibleman cause. But, yeah, I don't think that's what they were going for. So yeah, you were doing so well with Incredible Force for Joy, you just kind of went to finish works of Dr. Fear. So now we get into the next version of the show, which I call the purple version. Because this is the most popular version. This is when it was the most popular, as I just said. With the classic purple costume, looking all stoic and heroic and all. Conquering the Wrath of Rage. We get Luxor Spondroth again, which... can you please explain how he keeps surviving all these deaths? I mean, yeah, he survived getting shot with the laser, and then they acknowledged that he was back again. And now he's back again after disintegrating. Okay. The costume is really bad in this one. The first one that he had, well, second one, I guess, Master of Misery in Incredible Force for Joy, was actually kind of good. And they even used some plastic stuff to scrunch his face up and make it look different. This, he's just kind of wearing an old bent up skater outfit, kind of, and then this kind of broken eyepiece, and it just kind of looks like they fished out of the garbage. And speaking of garbage, they now live in the sewer. Isn't that a really cool lair for a villain? I'll admit the sewer set is okay, but it's just kind of dumb. Why is it dumb? Well, it's because the sewer is usually a lair for comedic relief villains. I mean, when you think big, bad, evil guy, do you think of someone who lives where all your waste goes? I mean, I could see someone like the Box Ghost living there, but not supposedly the next Lord of Evil. But that's not the only problem here. So, there's this thing where the villain gets this gold dust and then dumps it on people and then they get angry. But the thing is with this is Bibleman kind of uses anger and wrath and violence to solve his problems most of the time, because he doesn't really kill the villains with scripture most of the time. Well, it's kind of hard to explain, but he uses violence, he uses his sword, he uses electricity, he doesn't use non-violent Gandhi-esque pacifism. So that's kind of another thing that they shoot themselves in the foot here. This one's really hypocritical. And they don't define what good anger is or bad anger. Because they just say in this one, all anger is bad, never get angry. But the thing is, God says that there are times you should get angry, just know when it's justified and know how to control it. They don't talk about that. They just say, don't be angry. Buy your stuff. The jokes are, again, really, really bad. The introduction of Cypher here, okay, really poorly done. The only thing is they say, hey, no, you missed Coates, but I'm the new guy. The end. And it's not really amounting to anything there. He's also really useless in the episode, too. He's just kind of there to set up stuff. One thing Coates did was he'd go out in the battle and use some of his weapons, like his shield things that he'd have on his wrist or his bazooka. Cypher just kind of goes around going, hey, I'm Cypher, look at me, wee, I'm cool. Again, good actor, just doesn't really do much. At least in the earlier ones he's in. The song, the first time in the show, the song is awful. It's a parody of La Vida Loca, and it's so dumb. It sounds like an old grandma when he sings it, and the beat is so really bad. Yeah. Oh, the jokes are even worse this time around. And the ending is one of the worst in the entire show. He literally says, God won't protect you or something, and then a beam of light comes down, hits the light, and he just turns into green slime. Well, the slime effect is better than a lot of the effects they had on here. That doesn't really justify that. That is the dumb ending. They were going to set up that God protects you. Yeah, sure, that'd be great, but all of a sudden he just drops his sword or something. This is the only time he's ever used pacifism. He never uses it again. I think the only reason they really used it here is just so that they wouldn't seem like even bigger hypocrites. But it doesn't work. Yeah, this one was really bad. But then Shattering the Prince of Pride, this was the first one I saw as a kid. And I really liked it as a kid. So what do I think of it now? Probably the second best so far, but that's not really saying much. First of all, it kind of seems right for this Luxor Spawndroth character to kind of act like this. Because he's always been really egotistical and he's always been really obsessed with himself and his plans. Now, that's kind of good. The costume is alright. It looks a little lame with the trench coat and stuff, but the armor pieces look kind of good, and they do kind of look like a burnt, destroyed version of the last one he had, which is kind of clever. It's not like a perfect transition, but it looks pretty similar. Might not be what they're going for, but it kind of looks the part. So you might as well claim that it is that. The lesson is, again, really, really dumb. It's about pride and stuff, and yeah, it works, but the reasons why they get arrogant in the story are just so superficial and lame. What? This kid gets jealous because there might be another guy who draws something on par with his work? And why is a kid getting hired by a comic book publisher? Anyways, and then Bibleman gets arrogant because the laser hits him. That's really the only reason he ever gets arrogant. Lucy causes, who's by the way the evil Eunice in the Dr. Fear one, that's when she premiered. She causes Eunice to blow up because reasons. And then here's another thing with this one, is they try to be extra funny in this one. And you know how much I love their style of humor. So there's a scene where it kind of sums up Bibleman's humor in a nutshell. There's a fight scene where there's Bibleman and the Prince of Pride fighting each other using their swords, which from here on the Luxor Spawndroth character will use a purple sword, but that is not relevant. So it cuts back to Cypher trying to fix Eunice, and then every time it cuts back to them, they're not really fighting anymore. They're doing something like rock, paper, scissors, or go fish. Now this could be funny, but the thing is, it's just kind of sloppily acted and so poorly edited in there that it ruins the joke. It could have been done really well. This kind of stuff's been worked with on Looney Tunes and Animaniacs and all that kind of stuff. Even VeggieTales has done some kind of stuff like this, but you were so close. It's just the execution was not good. They have good ideas sometimes, but it's just the execution never works. That's basically how I can describe their humor. But there's also random jokes that make no sense, like all of a sudden they just start talking Japanese. And that's it. That's the joke, is that they're talking Japanese. They also reference stuff that Pride is similar to, like Sonny and Cher. Look, the parents aren't laughing, they're rolling their eyes, and the kids don't get it. Why even bother? Now let's talk about those songs. The first one is just kind of generic and bland. The second one is just kind of weird and bland. Yeah, so, and then we come to the ending. Oh my gosh, how did they get away with this? This is one of the most gruesome scenes I've seen in a kid's show. Not just Christian, like ever. This is horrifying. This is up there with what SpongeBob has done with like the Splinter. If the effects were better, this would be traumatizing to kids. But luckily, the effects, while the effects are better than what they've had, they aren't the best, but still, let me explain what happens. So, the Prince of Pride has his laser gun mounted to his shoulder so that he can keep shooting people, make him feel arrogant. Bibleman keeps deflecting it and it hits him, causing him to get hurt. So he keeps wincing and getting back and back, and all of a sudden, he's just falls and lands on one of those high voltage electric boxes. And that's in the sewer. He starts screaming and saying like, oh, this almost feels good, but like screaming his head off. And then we cut to Bibleman looking at the wall, and then also there's like these green splatters coming out. So like pieces of him are like flying out and splatting against the wall. And he starts screaming more, and then this stuff just splats all over the wall. His skin explodes and his skeleton falls to the ground. Yeah, this is for kids and for Christian children. I'm sure the mothers would love that. I know my mom took a really weird look at it when she first saw that. Now I was just confused as to why Bibleman would be so gory. I mean, it's cool now, but it's for kids though. So the overall episode's just kind of meh, like exactly middle of the road. I loved it as a kid. So now we're getting to, it's not really another incarnation thing again, but it is a dark spin this thing's going. Willie Ames wanted the show to get darker. He wanted the show to get more serious. Not quite Batman the Animated Series levels, but he wanted it to get darker. And this is evident in the next episode, Breaking the Bonds of Disobedience. While there are a little bit of lighthearted things in here, like the whole Bibleman play aspect, like they're putting on a play, which leads to a lot of awful jokes, like the villains just randomly throwing in screenwriting terms and casting terms, and then that's supposed to be jokes. That's basically 75% of the humor in here. It's really, really bad. The humor is, at least. But, so, they had a dark turn, and aside from that kind of stuff, this is a little intense. Again, not the darkest we're getting, because we're in 2 episodes from here, we're gonna get something woo. But, for the time being, yeah, oh boy. So first of all, this is literally a darker episode, as in the lights have been turned down significantly. The sewer is no longer glowing red, but glowing black in this episode. This one, and only like 2 others, I think, which don't even feature this villain, is black with a bunch of shining white light in there. There's a bunch of talk about diseases and microbes. They even abduct Bibleman and then strap him to a torture machine. The villain looks like he's pretty much dead, which, side note, I love this costume. Like, actually, I'm not kidding, this costume looks really good. He's kind of got like this big metal, almost like an anti-Bibleman costume, with the exception of the helmet. He's kind of got gray, evil-looking kind of stuff from the neck down, and then his head, he's all bald and kind of, he's got a little bit of scars here, and he's got this almost monocle thing over his eye, but it's kind of robotic, so it looks like it's a robotic implant thing. It actually looks pretty cool. And the ludicrous in this one is kind of trying to be like Seth Rogen, because he's big like Seth Rogen, he sounds like Seth Rogen, but he's just kind of weird, because he has the same dialogue that the old kid Ludacris had. Because the Seuss one was just kind of like a lampshade guy who'd always point out how dumb whatever's happening is. This Ludacris is just a spaz. This one is trying to be the kid one, but as an adult. And by the way, no mention of why all of a sudden this clearly obvious casting change happened, whether in or out of show. And so how does the darker stuff transfer into this one? It's something. For one, Cypher gets to fight now, and the first fight scene starts off pretty intense with him trying to see, like, wait a minute, you're this guy, you're the guy from all these previous episodes, except for the Shadow of Doubt, because apparently Williams and the rest of the crew want to forget the first 3 episodes, which I don't blame them. But yeah, then the fight just kind of stops. The second fight is really, really dumb because Bible Girl has a net and then it just glows and then she's able to fight him. But then the last fight it's both a mixture between dark and then kind of goofy and stupid. Like, they steal the "I am your father" thing from Bibleman, or not Bibleman, they didn't steal it from Bibleman, they stole it from Star Wars, and then they use it here as clearly a joke, but it's so dumb. They're just referencing that's the twist. What's the joke here? It's just that Ludacris says, "I'm your father," and then Cypher screams. What's the joke? I don't get it. Just quoting movies itself isn't funny. There are a couple jokes that work. 2 specifically. One of them got a little chuckle out of me, which is when they have this, by the way, another dark aspect. They have this poisonous microbe they inject into Bibleman's bloodstream so that he will stray away from God. Which, yeah, that's a thing. But also, one of the things he says, like, you can't see these germs in here because they're invisible to the naked eye. And Lucy says, are we allowed to say naked on a family show? And he just kind of gives her a look. It's just an expression. Kind of like that. It was okay. The way he did it was pretty funny. And then another one that also gave me a little bit of a laugh was Bibleman raises up his hand and then the sword drops out from the sky and he holds it aloft and he's like, I got friends in high places. The villain just looks at his sword and then just like puts it in the other hand. I'd have no friends. And it's kind of stupid, but I thought it was kind of funny. The rest of it, though, can't say it really works. Whether it be the awful humor. And another thing is with this one, the dark tone is fine. I like the dark tone. The part where it gets darker, it takes itself more seriously. That's fine. But the thing is, if you want to be dark, you can't just haphazardly throw random jokes in there. It doesn't work. Because when they're trying to be serious and weird, all of a sudden they'll just throw in a random joke and they go right back to being serious. And the jokes, again, are really big, obvious, loud, cartoony jokes, which just ruins the moment and ruins the effect you were going for. So yeah, good attempt, and so close to getting to like okay level, but whether it be the really, really bad comedy and the really poorly placed comedy, the forced theater aspect, and the really strange rap number in the beginning, it could have worked. There's something here. You could have salvaged it, but no, it just didn't work. So then there's the next episode, the last one with the Luxor Spawnroth character. Say goodbye, everybody. Lead us not into temptation. As a kid, I hated this episode because there's only one fight scene. Now, as a kid, I just kind of judged it on the action. That's why I like Prince of Pride so much, because there's so much action, so much going on. I didn't like this one because it was slow and dialogue heavy, and as a little boy, I wanted to see people die and get killed and sliced and all that kind of stuff. As an adult, you know, this is actually, we're kind of a tour de force when it comes to, like, Incredible Force for Joy. We're back to here. So this episode's a lot slower, so it takes a lot more time to talk. There's not a ton of Bibleman himself in it, but there's more of the character he is outside of the costume, like his secret identity, Miles Peterson. See, there's this thing called www.hack'emup.com that the villain creates, and it causes people to get tempted to go back to their old lives because either they don't feel secure in their Christian life because there's a girl they're targeting who's a new Christian and she feels like she's losing all her old friends and no one's going to like her anymore, so she's going to hang out with her old friends who are bad influence. And then even Cypher, for the first time, really, aside from injecting somebody with microbes into their bloodstream, someone gets like an actual deep psychological problem on the team. Cypher starts hanging out with one of his old college friends who's apparently kind of a rowdy party guy who kind of, they don't really specifically say what he does, but you can kind of pick up on what the kind of guy he is and the kind of guy Cypher used to be. So then he kind of starts going back into that old lifestyle. Well, it's nothing too deep, nothing too Batman the Animated Series-esque. It's not bad for Bibleman, honestly. It takes a lot more of a slow, more down-to-earth, more actual focused around a lesson that they actually understand. And the thing they actually use to teach the lesson is not bad at all. They give some actual good advice and some good reasons to why it's okay to be tempted. It's not your fault, just don't give in. But keep in mind, you can't do it on your own. That kind of stuff. And the villain is actually not even really in it very much. He's got a couple parts here and there, but up until the last fight scene, it's mostly just exploring what's going through these characters' heads. Now, I'm probably making it sound a lot better than it is, because it's not great. It's not amazing. Again, some of the jokes are kind of lame, but, well, it's alright, though. Aside from some of the bad jokes and a couple misplaced arcs here and there, like story developments, it's not bad. I'd say it's actually kind of decent. That fight scene at the end, too, actually, not so bad. If Lucy was never in this again, this would have made it actually even cooler, because Ludacris dies for good. It makes it very clear that they're not coming back, and it's really climactic the way they go, too. And they just throw one little dumb joke at the end where they keep saying, and ever, and ever, and ever, too long. And other than that, it was actually kind of decent. So, probably, again, best one so far. It's not going to stay the same way for long, though, because the next episode, by the way, before we move on, for those who own the original VHS, there's a part at the end, after the fight scene. It pans over to a door, and you can see somebody in the window of the door, kind of going, making weird noises. That kind of lets you know, uh-oh, something's happening. Yep. We're going there. So, remember how I said that Williams wanted this thing to get dark and deep? Well, he decided to go all the way with it. Bibleman had a 2-part, action-packed, ultra-dark, ultra kind of gritty for kids show even episode. And you know what? I like it. I actually do like it. Like, genuinely, this is the only episode of the show, I think, that I can honestly say I genuinely like. Not like Incredible Force for Joy or Lead Us Not Into Temptation, like, hey, that was actually kind of good. Not kind of surprised. That was pretty decent. This is actually good. Actually good. There are some problems here and there, though. The villain is a decent villain. Sometimes. He's a parody of Jerry Lewis. Now, you know, Jerry Lewis was kind of a jerk sometimes, and he'd be really sophisticated, but then sometimes he'd do the, oh lady, your shoes are too fat for, your feet are too fat for shoes too small, lady, Floyd Lavin, that kind of thing. Like Mr. Director on Animaniacs, he's Jerry Lewis. He's kind of that. When he's being a villain, he's good. When he's being Jerry Lewis, he's annoying. Because whenever he'll laugh, he'll go, what? It's just kind of dumb. And it doesn't really make sense with the character. And sometimes he'll just randomly kind of pick up a microphone and start singing random things. He's a decent singer, I'll give him that. It's just kind of weird. And also, again, the jokes don't work. But the production value has gotten a lot better. The effects are still kind of lame sometimes, but sometimes they're not bad. Like, they give him this weird contact lens thing. You know it's a contact lens because they didn't genetically modify his eye, but one of his eyes is like a snake eye, and I think that's kind of cool. They also give him red veins on his face that you can only see in some scenes when he's like the angriest or the most intense. The lighting on this one is actually good. It really changes the mood and it really helps set it. And you can also feel that although Bibleman did have a lot of conflicts to face, and specifically Incredible Force for Joy or Breaking the Bonds of Disobedience, this is the first time where he's actually outmatched. Because this episode was kind of made to address one of the controversies. Yeah, Bibleman and controversy. I haven't seen one of those in a while. So Bibleman was considered to be the hero over God. He was just a hero who used God as a weapon. that's kind of what a lot of people were accusing him of, and I can totally see that, really. Aside from just quoting random scripture here and there, he basically is just kind of a typical Luke Skywalker meets Iron Man guy. But in this one, they kind of explore the philosophy behind that, with a Jerry Springer-esque show on here and all the people turning on him. Because now it's not the kid of the week, it's the whole city. The whole city is now affected by this whole thing. And now that we see more people than just the random kid and even a Jerry Springer stand-in, it kind of gives it a big, more of a scope. We get to see more of what's going on. And it makes it feel bigger, and Bibleman also gets captured. And unlike the strangely disturbing and almost kind of perverted scene that we got a couple episodes ago, this one's actually kind of intense. It's not huge or anything, but this music works really well. The acting is actually pretty good. And the fight scenes aren't bad either. This is one of the first times that the villain doesn't really have a sword. He just uses bombs and energy and electricity and stuff, and the choreography is a lot better than what we've seen before. Maybe they should just stick with that and not give him a sword. Wink, wink. The last fight scene is actually pretty good, and it's gotten a lot bigger stakes. We now see Bibleman have 2 swords, bigger shields, and is actually doing his best to fight with all 3 of his teammates. They all 3 have to gang up on this guy, and even then they barely scrape by. Which again shows you just how big of a threat this Primordius guy is. Even the villain song is actually a really cool song. Again, some dumb lyrics here and there, but it's actually probably the best song they've ever had. It's called You're Under My Skin, and I know why this guy was cast. He sounds like Jerry Lewis when he sings. Actually, he could probably make a living as a Jerry Lewis stand-in, even though that probably wouldn't really make very much money. You get the idea. He's actually really good at it. And the instrumentals are great too. It's just kind of a nice beat. It sounds really cool, actually. Are there a couple other issues aside from the humor? Well, yes and no. It's still a little hokey and just kind of a little too on the nose sometimes, but like if I were to watch any episode, I'd pick this one. But you remember how I said that I'd probably show my kid The Incredible Force for Joy? There's a reason. Because Leaves Not to Temptation, if they were like me, they probably wouldn't appreciate all the dialogue. This one might scare them, actually. I saw this when I was about 10 or so, and I was fine with it, because I was older. But if I was a younger kid watching this, I don't know, there's some imagery in here that's kind of strange, like all the bile and disease that this guy spreads around. It's all this green slime, Bioman getting tortured, all this really strange violence going on. It might be a bit much for kids. That's probably why on the back of the original VHSs and DVDs it had a little bit of a higher age ranking. Instead of ages 8 to 12 or something, it was ages 11 to 12 or something. I don't remember. But there is one more problem with the episode, and that's not with the episode itself. It's with the re-release. So this was released on 2 VHSs and later DVDs. So it was Jesus Our Savior Part 1, Jesus Our Savior Part 2. When Tommy Nelson got a hold of it, it was just Jesus Our Savior. They cut out a lot of the episode and then squeezed it into this episode. Just one 45-minute show instead of an hour show. About 7 or so minutes were cut. The whole ending was cut. Because there's an ending where Bibleman says he's going to retire because this is when the network was starting to interfere. And because they saw this one, they weren't so happy with the direction it was going, so they wanted to change it. And then Willie Ames said that if they were going to change it too much, he would leave. So he set this up in preparation. That he was going to leave. And that he was going to take a break and all. And then at the end, Coates comes in out of nowhere and then shoots Bibleman and then cut to black. That whole ending, from the part where he gives his ending speech to the part where Coates shoots him, it's gone. All gone. That whole there and then a couple other bits here and there in the middle of the episode, all gone, just cut out. Just because, I don't know, they wanted to save money on DVD costs. Something like that. It doesn't do the episode service, but I honestly recommend, if you are curious, go see this one. Just see the 2-part version, not the spliced together Tommy Nelson version. So yeah, Bibleman can actually do something that's legitimately good. How do they follow this one up? Especially with that strangely dark cliffhanger with Bibleman getting shot. They make one of the worst episodes thus far. A Light in the Darkness was another one I hated as a kid because of the lack of fighting. Now as an adult, I hate it because it's just so poorly written. So Primordius is back, but not in the same way that Luxor Sparnoth came back. It's not him this time impersonating like Frank Sinatra or Tony Danza. No, he is just Professor Kelp from The Nutty Professor. Now the wacky protester. And you remember how I said he was only annoying when he did the Jerry Lewis stuff? Like the wacky professor stuff? That's his whole thing now. That's all he does. He's not even really a threatening villain. Instead of a big, scary monster, he is now a tiny, insignificant blue nerd who goes, "I will destroy you, Bibleman." And that's actually what he sounds like. I'm not exaggerating. He sounds just like that. And he has the lisp, and he's all weaselly and cowardly, and he's weak. We get a reason why he was changed, because Satan was so embarrassed and angry that he came so close to beating him but lost. They decided to strip him of all his might and power and intimidation. He still gave him his energy powers, of course, to defend himself, but he made him look pathetic and weak. But he's still obnoxious. And then they also let him improv a lot of jokes and a lot of humor, and it's some of the worst, honestly. And the song in this one, they went from the best song to one of the worst songs. If you thought that Jerry Lewis kind of screechy voice was annoying, listen to it sing, and then you won't complain about the speaking anymore. Then there's The Lesson, which is the same thing as The Incredible Force for Joy. There's no getting around it. It's just the same thing. It's the only time the show's ever repeated a lesson, and what they did right in that one, they do wrong in this one. They just say, don't be sad because you have friends. What if you don't have friends? Then don't be sad. That's basically it. They throw God here and there in, and yeah, the fight scenes went from that big, awesome, grand one we got in the last one to just kind of pinging electric balls here and there. The ending is, again, really, really stupid. He gets defeated because they quote scripture at him. Yeah, for those who are complaining that why doesn't Bibleman use scripture to kill his enemies, here you go. They literally just quote scripture at him and then he fades away. The end. And it's not like the Shadow of Doubt either, where he disappears. No. He just kind of goes blah, and then fades away. It was really anticlimactic and really lame. The music is trying to build it up like it's this big, huge event, but it's not. It's so dumb. The production values took a dip from the last one, too. The sets look worse. The costume looks awful. The new costume they had, which was another little issue in the last one, too. Forgot to mention it. They mostly didn't look that bad in that one because of the lighting it used. But this one, the lighting is just so bad, you can see the problem with it. There's so much fabric on this, and it looks so plasticky, you wonder how it's going to defend him. Now, there's always been a lot of fabric on the costume, of course. It's not going to be one big solid lump of supposedly holy material or whatever. But there's so much fabric on this, and it's so loose on him, and it looks so fake. It doesn't look right. So yeah, that one was just kind of bad. Then Divided We Fall. The last one to have the Willie Ames, Miles Peterson character. So, how did we send him off? With an episode where the wacky protester, he's back, yay. Oh no. I don't know if he dubs over their conversations or creates computer simulations that look so real to what they're talking about. Anyways, he makes it look like, because randomly there's the wacky protesters get spotted and then say Bibleman and Bible Girl will go out, and then Cypher's watching them on the computer. I don't know why he doesn't go with them, but let's just roll with it. Then he edits the footage to make it look like they're talking bad about him behind his back. Rinse and repeat for the other people, and now they're all at each other's throats, and then they're trying to, I don't know, quit or just get retribution or something. And meanwhile, this is also that they won't interfere with him when he manipulates a really popular and really poorly animated TV show and then makes all the kids worship him or something. But there's a big problem with this plan. How would they know you're doing this? You don't need to worry about them because they don't know you're planning this. If they found out about your plan and then you wanted to get rid of them on the side, I would understand that. But if you just did this thing where you influence the TV show, they won't know, and by the time they find out, it's gonna be too late. You shot yourself in the foot here, Mr. Lewis. Oh, I'm sorry, you're not Jerry Lewis. How could I have been so mistaken? You're so good at it. He's a good Jerry Lewis guy, just not a good Nutty Professor guy. And then there's a really poorly thrown in Larry Boy reference. The humor is bad. It's just kind of... The whole thing I can describe this episode is just same. It's just the same. Most of the fight scenes in this are just computer simulations anyways. And then the fight scene at the end is just embarrassing. Like, Lucy gets into a bunch of drones or something and then shoots at the others while the wacky protester, I hate that name, basically emulates the guy from Sunset and the Gossip Queen, but 1,000 times worse. Every time he taps swords, he just gets flown around. They're going, la, la, I'm out of control, how I'm goofy and weird, and how am I a threat? This guy would work better if he was, say, the box ghost or the condiment king of the show. If he was just the joke villain that they take care of in the first couple minutes, because they usually have those. They usually have a one-off villain that they take care of in the very beginning of the episode to set up the story. If he was that guy, I think it would work better, because he's so lame and so not threatening, you can't take him seriously. And it would be really cool for a story progression too. The big bad villain from the couple other episodes ago, Jesus Our Savior, now demoted to just the joke villain. It would work a lot better, and it would show you just how unforgiving the devil is, as opposed to how forgiving God is. Just a little bit of thing on the top of my head. Already it's better. This guy is terrible as a mainstay villain. You can't take him seriously. You can't be scared of him. You just groan at how annoying this portrayal is and how dumb his methods are. But at last, we get to the new Bibleman, a fight for faith. So you know how Jesus Our Savior was the big epic story that Willie Ames always wanted to tell? Well, here's the big epic story that Thomas Nelson always wanted to tell. It's a lot more lighthearted than Jesus Our Savior. It's a lot goofier. So first of all, the wacky protester feels embarrassed because, okay, by the way, he's back. Yay! Oh no. Don't worry, this is the last time we're ever going to see him. Yay! Then he decides to rebrand himself as Rutan Guy, which is supposed to be Rotten Guy. And so then he acts like a strange pedo man and lures a bunch of children into his lair with the promise of treats and fun and no parents. Ignoring the undertones here because I am a mature adult. Anyways, he has this device set up where it brings you into this alternate world where there's no God, and then he's going to lock him in there forever. And then he's going to raise a new generation of children with no God. And then he gets thwarted because he finds out that God is everywhere. What's the lesson here? They claim it's believing in God, which is, I guess, the biggest lesson you could do. A little similar to Shadow of Doubt, but they don't portray it at all. They just portray it as, don't do fun stuff because it's bad, or follow God because you should. The lesson here is the most muddled it has ever been so far. I can't even really pick out what it's supposed to be. It's just so clumsily put together and so poorly done. I have no idea what they're trying to portray here. But that's not all. The new Bibleman is nothing compared to Williams. Williams was a decent actor. This guy overacts so much. He's like, I read the Bible, you cannot defeat me, I know what I'm doing. He's that kind of actor. trying to sound super intense but also super fun and just kind of seems lame. The big fight scene, because there's only one in this one, is in song, and it's a joke. The Cypher guy sings well. We all know Wacky Boy can't sing. The way he gets defeated is also kind of anticlimactic, because he gets locked forever in his world. Which, on the one hand, well, on one part, the world is a nice place. And then second, what's going to stop Satan from dragging him out and bringing him back in? I'll tell you what's going to stop him. Lack of network interest. Because after this, Bibleman took a bit of a break. Bibleman Power Source came in. So what's Bibleman Power Source? What makes that so different? The costumes are all different. The camera angles and the camera cinematography in general is just entirely different. The lighting is different. The writing is different. Well, some of the actors are different. The acting methods are different. The background music is different. Everything is different. But you want to know what's really embarrassing about this? Even though they were doing pretty well in popularity, their popularity is starting to dip after Divided We Fall. But they still had a lot of money. This is the cheapest they've ever been. Even the Bibleman show had some better stuff than this. The effects are even worse. This is some of the stuff that I use, and I don't sell people my stuff for $10 a DVD. This is embarrassing. And just to show you how cheap they are, the Bible Cave is no longer used, even though Miles supposedly left everybody on the team, the whole thing. Now they're in a trailer, at a trailer park. I'm not kidding. They are relegated to using a little camper to do all of their superhero mission stuff. You can't make this stuff up. Actually, you can, and it's really dumb. So, now we get to another episode that is, in all honesty, not that bad. This is another one I'd kind of put as slightly above middle of the road. It's called Terminating the Toxic Tonic of Disrespect. And it's got a lot of issues, like some bad pacing, a random fight scene with the villain they later reuse called the Cheater, and they just kind of throw it in randomly. But this episode does do some stuff right. Again, it uses an older kid, which, personally, I think you should use older kids more often. Not only are they much better actors than the Kid of the Week they normally get, but also it's because, well, young kids can perceive what the old kids are going through, and, well, older people are often intimidated by impersonated, you know what I mean, by younger children, and then they can copy off what they're doing. So if they use a more adult person, who knows, maybe they'll be able to see that as just as much of an influence as they would a younger kid who can barely act. Also, Bibleman and Cypher go through a little bit of a disrespect thing with their new Bible girl that they have, which actually it doesn't get brought up a ton, but it's pretty decent, the way they handle it when they do talk about it. The villain, I gotta be honest, he's actually kind of creepy. Because, not because of the way he's portrayed, it's because of the way he looks. His eyes are peeled back, he's got ugly green makeup, and he just kind of looks like a little bit of a man you don't want your kids going near, for reasons. But he's actually okay. Keep that in mind as we get forward. Yeah, this one was okay. It was alright. But it was definitely a catalyst for what the show would later become. The writing is some of the worst it's ever been. Some of the jokes are just deplorable. But we're getting to the next one. We're almost done, people. Tuning out the unholy hero. A big silver guy who is actually black. You're not fooling anyone, is creating a new television network that either hypnotizes kids into doing wrong, or just they actually do it themselves because they're copying him, or I have no idea. And he has a universal remote that can control stuff. There was exactly one joke that I like, and might be one of my favorite jokes in the entire series. So much so that I even ported it into one of my own videos from years ago. The yuck bar joke. It comes out of nowhere. It amounts to nothing, but on the network, He has a series of random, really poorly made shows. And then one of them is a commercial for something called the Yuck Bar. I laugh so hard at that. Maybe it's just because it's dumb. Maybe it's actually genuinely good. I don't know, but I love it. The rest of it, though, is just kind of stupid. The humor is really bad. The sets are awful. His lair is just a black room with a couch and then a couple pieces of, like, silver stuff around. It looks awful. The kid actors are some of the worst ever. And there's like a mini protest group and everything that rises up because of this. And then there's a bunch of random jokes, like no one can pronounce his name right in the second half of the episode, even though everyone could earlier on. The way he's defeated is just really quickly done and then really kind of nothing. It's just kind of dumb. What more can I say? Crushing the conspiracy of the cheater. The cheater's back. So yeah, they're so far out of ideas that they have to use one-off characters again. Yay. But to be honest, this guy, I kind of like him. I like the villain in this one. But mostly because he knows what he's in. He knows what he's doing. He knows he's not doing Shakespeare. He's not doing like a Tim Burton Batman movie or even Christopher Nolan. No. He knows he's doing schlock, and he is loving it. He overacts so much, and it is such a joy to watch. Like, whenever the kid's like, oh, isn't that cheating? He's like, oh, cheating? No, I don't think it's cheating. He's so over the top and so enjoyable. He knows the lines he's delivering are just the dumbest thing ever, but he's having so much fun in it. Which is great he's in it because the rest of it is just really, really boring. It's not even cringy, it's just boring. They don't try to tell very many jokes in this, and the ones that they do are, again, typical Bibleman jokes that never hit the mark, except for, again, that awesome guy who plays the cheater. There's also some really interesting things in this one, like there's a Pump It Up plug. You know that party place that used to exist everywhere but now only has like a couple places because the company is not doing so well, where there's all those inflatable toys and all that you get to jump on and stuff. I mean, it's great for kids, but why do they have a fight scene on there? It just exists for product promotion. That's it. There's also some really weird things like the cheater's sword can like create lightning storms or something. It can create electric currents. And then there's just the whole thing is just kind of dull, with the exception of the awesome cheater guy who might make this thing worth watching just because he's so funny and so over the top. If you can find this episode, that is, a lot of the Power Source ones have disappeared. You can find a ton of Bibleman DVDs and even rips online, but the Power Source ones seem to be disappearing. Almost like they're trying to bury them. Lambasting the Legions of Laziness is next. This is where Bibleman officially became nothing. Because the last three sold awfully, and they got terrible reviews. So when this one came out, they had to create a whole bunch of promotion and stuff and pretty much beg people to buy it, and it didn't work. Let me explain the brilliant concept of this story. Santa Claus comes out with his lantern slash staff slash disc slash whatever he's got this episode or whatever, because he's got different stuff every time you see him. He makes people sleepy and tired and fall asleep, and then that's supposed to make them lazy somehow because they're tired, and then they sleep. And then Bibleman tells them, don't sleep, that's a sin. And then they say, you're right, it's a sin, let's kill Santa. And then they do. And then there's a guy from Cinema Sins in this episode because he needed $50 apparently. He tells a really interesting story of why he was in this one. Go check it out. Look it up, Cinema Sins, Bibleman, and he'll tell you the story. But, yeah. This one is so dumb. First of all, the villain is Santa. He's called the Slacker, and then they keep having this joke where he's like, oh, they're gonna call you Slacker. Wait, that's my name. No, oh jeez, remembering things is hard work. They basically do that joke 4 times. And he looks like Santa Claus. He's got the red robe, he's got the red hat, he's got the big beard. He's just evil Santa. And then they try to do a bunch of jokes with him of how lazy he is to fight and stuff. This is another thing with Teen Ludacris. It's the same kind of scenario. Good actor, bad direction. He's almost kind of like a diet cheater. He knows what he's in is lame, and he's trying to play it up, but the director caught on to it, and so he's trying to have him winnow it down. That's kind of what it occurs to me as. And the whole lesson is not even laziness, it's just people getting tired. That's it. There's a whole bunch of fourth wall jokes in here too, and none of them work. They're all awful. And I mean it, they are really, really bad. Even like a Sesame Street-esque one, and oh, it's all awful. And then the ending, oh my gosh, the ending is so brutal. They literally stuff him in a box and mail him to hell. I'm not kidding, that's actually what they do. Not kidding, that is, wow. One more thing I just noticed in Power Source, they don't kill the villains. I mean, technically speaking, it's kind of ambiguous as to what happened with the first villain. Then it was kind of ambiguous in the second one too, but the cheater just shrunk and ran away. This guy gets mailed to hell. None of them get defeated, really. None of them, well, they get defeated, but they don't die anymore. I guess they're just trying to winnow down the violence and shove in some more A-grade comedy. But that's not all. They have like 7 running jokes in this. One of them was funny, but then they keep ruining it. The slacker one, again, could have been funny, but it was just so on the nose. Now, there is a joke where Bibleman wants to sing, and he sucks. Which is not true, because at this point, they were recording a cast album, and then they have some original songs that are actually really good. I even have one of them on my iPod. I'm not kidding. Well, I haven't used that iPod in a long time, but that song is now on my iPhone, which I do use, and it's actually a really good song. It's called Give 'Em Away. Mostly because Cypher is singing, and he's actually a good singer. And the lyrics actually don't suck, but that's not the point. There's a joke in here where, it's the running joke, where he keeps saying he wants to sing, but then everyone says, like, he sucks. The first time they used it was funny, but then they keep using it, and then it keeps getting destroyed. Like, the first time, they do it is they're at the gym and they see the kid that they're helping out, the kid of the week, who wants to sing, and then Cypher's like, hey, you know, I've sung a lot, yeah, I could help you out with your singing lessons, and then Bibleman's like, yeah, and then Cypher looks at him and gives him a glare, and I've heard him sing, he's really good, yeah, he could really help you out. It was decent, it was kind of funny, but they keep using it, and they keep smashing it over the head. That's even the last line of the episode. And also, now, starting with, I don't know if it was this one or a couple episodes ago, it's really hard to tell. So Bibleman used to, at the end, say, like, hi, kids, and then he'd explain something about the lesson, just kind of summing it up, kind of the, we're over here by Cord to talk about what we learned today parts. Now they lead you through this whole Lord's Prayer-esque thing where they have you get down on your knees and then invite Jesus in your heart. Noble effort again, but just so hokey and lame. 2 episodes left, but here's where we get to the confusing stuff. I don't know which one comes next. Different sources list different things. They came out around the same time, mostly because Tommy Nelson was like, okay, we're done with Bibleman. Let's get this over with and get it out. I'm aware there was a live show that they did that was just live exclusive that was released to DVD, but I'm not counting that. That's not in the main series. But anyways, so let's just go in the order that I saw them. So there's this one where there's the Super Pro Game Master bully. And, okay, he's not the Prince of Pride. I just want to clarify that because I know he looks exactly like him. Right down to the makeup and the headdress. But the thing is with this guy is they were so cheap with him. They use old costume pieces that they had lying around. They use Dr. Fear's undershirt. They use one of Bibleman's old shield gauntlets. They use the Prince of Pride's helmet. They use a whole bunch of other stuff. They even use some of Luxor Splendroth Mark II in there, if you can find it. And my guess is they're like, oh, it's a cameo thing. But no, it's just lazy. And speaking of lazy, this is a super weak story. So this game master guy who's a robot, okay, he comes onto the screen and says, "Hey, Bibleman, I found out your secret identity. Now you'd better give up or I'm gonna hurt you." And then the whole episode's just him moping around like, "I don't know what to do. He's gonna hurt me, guys, if I'm Bibleman. What am I gonna do?" That's basically it. And then there's a really dumb fight scene at the end. And then there's a subplot with all these kids getting bullied, and they barely even talk with Bibleman in there. It doesn't even really fit. Of the Power Source ones, I'd say this one's probably the worst, and this is the one that made me give up on Bibleman as a kid. Maybe I was getting too old, maybe the show was getting bad, but I'd say probably both. Now, the last one, this was supposed to be the big grand finale, but they messed up on so many areas. I'm sorry to just be so blunt about it, but look at the length of this video. I want to get done. So, in the presence of enemies, there is no lesson to this one, which I can understand. Sometimes you want to just do something and just kind of have fun. But the thing is, there's no lesson. But they think there is a lesson. See, what they do is, the villains, all of them team up except for the guy in the first one. You know, the guy who I actually thought was kind of a decent villain. Although the cheater's back though and hamming it up like usual, and I love it. But, yeah. So their plan is to switch out their Bible verse studies with verses that don't exist. And then because they're quoting verses that don't exist, they all of a sudden aren't powerful and can't hold their own in battle anymore. And it's not like you're putting in verses that are discourage people. These are so obviously not real. The books they're in sound fake. The words they say sound fake. And for people that have supposedly read through the whole Bible multiple times, wouldn't they realize, hey, there's no such book as Second Scalepians? And the fight scenes are just awful. The humor is awful. I can't say any more about this because it's all the same. It's just going through the motions at this point. They're not trying anything new. They're just doing the same tired, boring, lazy thing. And they think that maybe, just maybe, if they keep being lazy, they can get more money and get their audience back. Well, you know what that got you? It got you canceled. That's what happened. You should have taken your own advice and not be lazy, even though you didn't even teach a laziness lesson. You taught a not being tired lesson. Bibleman has since become the laughingstock of the Christian children's department. Now, if they just stopped with the first series, if they stopped with a fight for faith, maybe they could have saved face and maybe just gone down in obscurity. But now, because Power Source is out there, and that they kept trying to milk it for all it was worth, and that the people behind it thought it was big like VeggieTales, which it wasn't. It most certainly wasn't. In the peak of its prime, it caught third place behind VeggieTales and 3-2-1 Penguins. But that was just at the peak. So ever since A Light in the Darkness, you guys were not in there. You guys dipped. You are not that popular anymore. Stop pretending like you are. People aren't buying it. People aren't buying you. They aren't buying your stuff. They, again, should have taken their own advice. Pride is what did them in. They kept thinking they were big. They kept thinking they were huge. They kept thinking they could do all this stuff because the people would come back to them because they were so awesome just because they were doing the Lord's work. Well, yes, they were trying to do good stuff. I know they were. Obviously, they had good intentions, but the execution was abysmal. It started off bad. It got decent towards the middle. There were 2 episodes in a row that I thought were actually kind of good. In fact, one of them I even told you guys to go watch. But you squandered it. You wasted it all. Thomas Nelson's probably to blame for this one. If not them, then the other executives that got a hold of it beforehand. Whoever it was, they mixed up the show and it was never able to recover. To think, if Willie Ames was still given more creative control, he probably wouldn't have left overall. He probably would have just stepped aside from the title character and would have kept going. And maybe he would have learned how to write good humor. Maybe he would have been able to really be able to direct better. Because he was fine at directing the primary cast, just not the kids and the villains sometimes. If you gave him more room to grow, maybe they'd still be around. except they are still around in animated form. What do I think about the Bibleman cartoon? It's the Bibleman Power Source animated show. What else can I say? It has the same issues. And if you don't know what those issues are, you have short-term memory loss on par with Dory, because I've been saying it over and over again. So what do I think of Bibleman as a whole? It sucks. It really does. You can tell they had so much ambition. They tried. They tried to be big. They tried to be huge. But they just didn't have the guts. They just didn't have the style. They just didn't have what it took to be big like VeggieTales. They were so close. If they just kept going with what was making them popular, they could have done it. They could have gotten a bigger budget. They could have gotten even better actors. But no. No, they just had to keep going with what was making them become the laughingstock. Because if we got more Jesus our Saviors, maybe the critics probably would have died down. But I know the criticism got to the people on the show, because they tried to lash out a lot, whether it be at the Conquering the Wrath of Rage or even some parts of Jesus our Savior. You can tell the criticism was getting to them. They were really starting to get angry. So that's probably why they got more obvious and in your face, because they were saying, you guys just don't get it. This is what we are. Now see, maybe we need to make it more obvious so you can see it. But in return, they made people hate them more. And now they are gone. And now they're desperately trying to come back with an awful animated show. With terrible animation at that. Will it last? Seriously doubt it. Ultimately, this is a show that could have been something great. It could have been something really good if it just had better people behind it. Keep Willie Ames. Willie Ames was great, of course. But he just needed better people around him, and probably a better distributor who would have given him more of a budget and more free reign. Pamplin was just too insignificant, and they didn't have enough money to fund things. They had to get a lot of really bad set pieces and production values. Thomas Nelson wouldn't give them any of that because that's what they were used to, and was too restrictive and too controlling. So, you probably should have gone with a better publisher. If you went with something like Word, maybe this could have been a whole nother thing. Maybe we could have had a big VeggieTales Bibleman rivalry or something. But, who knows? This is one of the longest videos I've made. It's a big, long talk video. Hope you enjoy it. See you guys later.